Hi everyone, my name is Snow, and today is January 1st, 2019. In honor of the new year and the end of 2018, I decided to do a top 10 books of 2018. I did one of these last year, so if you want to see that, I'll link it up in the card. The books that I'm going to be talking about today, much like the ones in last year's video, didn't all come out in 2018. These are just 10 books that I read during the year and loved. I don't think I gave all of them 5 stars, but they are 10 of my favorites. Now, I have to say that I had a pretty good reading year this year. There were a few books that I was not a big fan of, but overall I had a pretty tough time picking my top 10 favorites, so I think that's a pretty good achievement. But without further ado, let's get into it because I have a feeling this is going to be a long video. I also realized that my lights weren't on, so we're gonna turn those on. Just a little note, the books I'm going to be talking about aren't in any particular order of most to least favorite, or even like a timeline of books I read. They're just 10 books that I've grabbed off my shelf. But the first one is Salt to the Sea by Heretics. Now, I am a big fan of historical fiction, especially taking place during World War II, and that is exactly what this book is about. It takes you through the lives of, not lives, what kind of lives? Lives / perspectives of 4 teenagers during World War II. And what's really interesting is they all come from different backgrounds. There's someone who used to fight, they're all on the run. One of them is actually fighting in the war. One of them is a girl who wants to become a doctor. There's a Polish girl who speaks no German, which is bad because they're in Germany. A guy who's basically trying to keep his identity secret from all the other people that he's meeting. And these 4 people do end up meeting at the end. They start off in different points in the story, but of course all of them come together, and it's really cool to see them meet, and then in the chapters all their stories kind of blend within each other. It was probably a little bit of a confusing explanation, but I love Heretics' books. I read Between Shades of Grey a few years ago now, and I love her writing style. I love her characters. This book will make you cry, just saying. But I do really love it and I would definitely recommend. The second book that I have is Winter by Marissa Meyer. I read both this and Stars Above in 2018, and this is the last book in the Lunar Chronicles. So I'm not going to talk too much about what exactly this book is about because, you know, spoilers for the other ones. But if you don't know what the Lunar Chronicles is, where have you been? Because it's been pretty popular for the past while. It is a series of fairy tale retellings. The first one is Cinder, which is a Cinderella retelling. Then there's Scarlet, which is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. What comes next? Cress, which is a Rapunzel retelling, and Winter, which is a Snow White retelling. And this all takes place in this fantastical fantasy world where there are cyborgs and people live on the moon. There's 2 worlds. You have Earth and Luna. And this book, I think, mainly takes place on Luna?
Luna? I think it's Luna, they're called Lunars. I'm really not sure.
But it's a super high fantasy book and I really recommend it. In the book, you have the people that live on Earth and the people that live on the moon, like I said. But it's really cool to see Earth and what's happened to it during this time. So just overall, it's super cool. It takes place in a lot of different places. There's a lot of different complex characters and all the relationships are super cute. And I would definitely recommend it if you love fantasy, if you love fairy tale retellings, if you just love fairy tales, if you love cute romance books. I would recommend this whole series. Now, the next 2 books are by the same author, so I'm going to talk about them together, and they are More Happy Than Not and They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. These 2 books are so sad, yet such beautiful books. Adam Silvera is an author that I just picked up this year. I hadn't read anything else by him before, and I ended up falling in love with his books. This one is about a boy named Aaron who is gay and lives in a world where you can erase parts of your memory. So yeah, that's really it. And then in They Both Die at the End, this is about 2 boys who live in a world where there is a thing that happens where 24 hours before you die, or the day that you're supposed to die, you get a phone call saying that you're gonna die that day. You don't know when and you don't know how, but over time they've created a website app kind of thing where you can meet up with others who have also gotten the call, or people there to support others that have gotten the call, and you can meet up and just live your last day the way that you want. And these two boys have both gotten the call. The saddest thing is that when you grow with these characters, you know that it's not going to turn out okay. You know that both of them aren't going to survive the book, but you're still hoping that they do. And I love this way more than More Happy Than Not, even though they're both beautiful books, just because of the way he was able to develop these characters in a day. Which is crazy because so many books take place like over the span of a year or a few years or a few months. This takes place over an entire day, and it's a pretty long book, and he's able to build so much development and so much character into a day, which I think is absolutely amazing, and I would recommend any of Adam Silvera's works if you haven't read any already. The next book I have, I don't know if I actually talked about this in my 2017 reads, I can't remember, but it's To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. I read this for a second time this year for school, and I love To Kill a Mockingbird. It's one of my favorite books. It's about this family, the Finch family, and specifically Scout, who's our main character. And it takes place from when she's like, I think like 6 to 10, something like that. She's really young during this whole book, and her dad is a lawyer, and she has an older brother named Jem, and it's just about their life and the people in the town and just what it's like to live in Alabama in the 60s, and it's a really great book. I don't know how else to explain it. I feel like if you don't know what To Kill a Mockingbird is about by now, you're really missing out. I don't want to talk too much about it because I feel like a lot of you have probably read it, if not for school, then just in general. I know that my mom has not read it yet, and she needs to, so Mom, I know you're watching this. Borrow this from you soon. Overall, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars because it's just one of my favorite classics of all time, and I think it's a book that everybody should read once in their life. 5 books down, 5 more to go. You know where this is heading. We have another Markus Zusak book. The Book Thief was absolute favorite book in 2017, but now we have I Am the Messenger as a favorite in 2018. This book is very different from The Book Thief. It is not a World War II historical fiction novel, but more of an adult book. It takes place in, I think, New York? Somewhere near there. Okay, so I don't really remember where it takes place, but it's about this guy named Ed Kennedy, who is a cab driver. He's in his very early 20s along with his friends who all work in the cab driving business. He loves to play poker with his friends, and one day in the mail he gets an ace. Over the course of the book he ends up getting all 4 aces, and each have a different kind of list of things. Some of them are names, some of them I think are addresses, and they're just different things that he has to do. And this all starts because he ends up kind of stopping a bank robbery from happening, which I know sounds weird, but that's how this book starts. And he ends up getting these cards and helping all the people on the list just make their lives better. And I really like this because it's just so different from his other book, and yet it's as beautiful as the first one. I just love Markus Zusak's writing. He has a new book out. I haven't read it yet, but hey, it's 2019. It'll probably make it into the top 10 of 2019 video. If you have not read a Markus Zusak novel and you don't like historical fiction, I would recommend I Am the Messenger. The message that it gives across is just so great, and I love Ed and his character and all of the characters that he meets on the way that he helps. Everyone's just great in this book, and I definitely think you should read it. The next book we're quickly going to talk about, because I feel like I've talked about it before because I love it so much, and it's The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Stephen Chbosky. I really do think I've talked about this a lot. I don't know if I actually have, but I feel like I have. So this is a cult classic novel, in my opinion. It's an amazing book. It takes place through the eyes of, I think his name's Charlie, and him starting high school. I read this when I was going into my sophomore year, which was really great because I'm currently a sophomore. Last year I was a freshman in high school. Seeing a book through the eyes of a freshman in high school was really interesting because I could really compare it to what I had just been through a few months before. It's about him meeting these friends who are seniors and him just really going through life. It takes place in, I think, letters. Yes, he addresses all of his letters to dear friend. I think that's really cool because I have not ever read a book that's told only through letters as the main exposition. But I think it's super cool to just see him progress throughout the story, see all of his friends progress throughout the story, And I know I'm cutting all of these synopsises short, but really all I can say about all of these books, especially this one, is it is a classic. I really do think that everybody should read it, especially if you are in high school. It really makes you think about who you are now, who you were in high school, and what's changing. What has high school taught you? And I do think that that's a lot of what this is about. So, would recommend if you're in high school right now. The 8th book that we have is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. Names are hard. But this is a story about Marie-Laure in Paris, and it is another World War II historical fiction. I love these things. Marie-Laure is a blind teenager. I think she's 16 during this book, and her father works at a museum where there's this precious jewel that's being held that's supposed to be cursed. But he builds Marie-Laure a model of the city and hides the gem within it, and she takes it with her on her little quest. Not really a quest, I don't know why I said quest, but her town gets bombed. She has to move in with her aunt, or her uncle and her uncle's caretaker, and this book is an amazing book. It really takes you to a different side of just characters. I've never read about a girl who's been blind before, and I never even thought about what it would be like to be in World War II or experience this when you're not sighted, you know? Like, there's this one scene that really broke my heart. Well, it was really scary too, where they're basically sending around this huge notice. They're dropping it from the sky, papers are blowing everywhere saying you have to leave, the city's being bombed, and she can't read it, which would be terrifying if there hadn't been somebody else there who could read her the thing and tell her to get out, because she would have died. You see her both when she's 16, and there's an epilogue where she's much older now. It's really great to see her because she, even though she's blind, she wants to become a scientist. She loves snails and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a great book. It's not super, I think, about World War II. So if you're wanting to get into historical fiction books but aren't really too sure, this isn't so much about the history and more about just Marie-Laure and her story. The next book that I have is Heretics Anonymous by Katie Henry. Now, I also love this book. I just read it maybe a month ago, and it's already become one of my favorites. The story is about Michael, who is an atheist going to a Catholic school. Now, already that sounds really interesting. But he ends up making friends with a girl who wants to become a priest and a bunch of other people. You have this one boy who's gay and a Jew who also goes to this Catholic school, somebody who practices like pagan Wiccan kind of stuff, and it's so great to see these people become friends and start this club called Heretics Anonymous, which is basically trying to teach the Catholic school students that what the teachers are telling you is not really how the world works. And the first thing that they do as a society is they basically infiltrate the sex ed talk that's every year. They mess around with the video a little bit and it becomes famous in their school. I love this book. I love the friendships that are made. I love Michael and Lucy, who is the girl who wants to become a priest. I love seeing their relationship grow throughout the book, and it's just really interesting being an atheist myself, seeing how other people view religion, Catholics, Jews, other atheists, and it's just a really interesting book, and I've never read anything quite like it. The last book that I have, book number 10 in my top 10 favorites of 2018, was a book I read about a week ago, and it is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin by Benjamin. This is about two boys, Aristotle and Dante, who end up meeting in the middle of summer and very quickly become friends. Now their lives are very different. Dante has this really interesting relationship with his parents, and Ari, or Aristotle, has a bit more distant relationship with everybody in his life. They are basically two polar opposites. Dante loves meeting new friends, he loves talking, expressing his ideas, he's really outgoing, and Ari is super reserved. He doesn't like sharing his life with other people, and he really hasn't made a friend until Dante comes around. Now, both of these boys are 16 in the book, and it's really just a story about them growing together, growing apart, and just becoming better people because of each other, and just overall really impacting each other's lives and becoming really mature teenagers. They're only 16 and 17 in this book, but But from the beginning to the end, they really grow just in that year. And it is a book I have heard a lot of amazing things about. And I would agree with every single one of them that I've heard. It is another book that I really think everybody should read. So those have been my top 10 reads of 2018. If you read any of these books during 2018, let me know. And also let me know what some of your favorites were for this year. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you soon with a new one. Bye!